Well, howdy doody 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 doo to you, young geographers. It's time to talk about landscapes and how they are different. Essentially, this lesson is going to run through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 landscapes, and they will be the main ones that we'll be focusing on, okay? I'm sure that you've heard of them before. I'm going to show you an example of where they are spatially distributed around the world. So, your learning goals. So, make sure you've written down that. Be sure to pause this video at any point if you need to. You've got to write down the lesson title, the date, learning goals, all of the notes in white, do the activity in blue, and the reflection activity in green. So our learning goals today, you're going to know different types of landforms. I think I said there were 8. You're going to be able to interpret a map. We're going to look at quite a few maps today. You're going to be able to create your own map. Woo, a very simple one. So let's do that. Right, type of landscapes. The first one, and this is all stuff you're taking down the notes, yep. I've tried to make it as short as I possibly can because I know that you hate writing lots and lots of notes. Here we go. Mountains. They rise above the landscape. There are often high peaks and steep sides to those mountains, and they're the result of processes deep in the earth. Tectonic plates, to be specific. Remember, pause this video to get all those notes down. I'm going to go through it quicker than you'd be able to write it down. So anyway, here's a map showing where mountains are around the world. So these are some of the biggest, most common mountain ranges in the world. Have a look at that map before I start going on about it. Have a think about what you can say about the distribution of mountain ranges around the world. Yes, hopefully. This is kind of like a Dora Explorer thing where I ask you to do stuff and wait for you to talk back to me. But basically, you'll notice that they're usually along the edges of land, yeah? And the edges of land are usually where tectonic plates get together. If I had handily included an even better map showing tectonic plates, how they connect together, that would have shown you. So you often find mountains at the edges of tectonic plates. Just a real brief reminder of what tectonic plates are. Simplest way for me to explain it is imagine a boiled egg, yeah? So it's boiled, it's hard on the inside, and you know when you're trying to crack the egg to get into the egg, crack the shell, just when you first crack it, and there's all these little different cracks and inside, and that basically all those little cracked bits of shell are kind of like the different tectonic plates. The only difference between that and the egg is that the tectonic plates are very, very slowly moving. Next type of landscape is deserts. Deserts have low rainfall. Surprise, surprise. They are dry, and there's a fancy word for you, arid. That means they're dry. They have extreme temperatures. Deserts aren't just hot, they can be cold. The biggest desert in the world is Antarctica. Or it might be Sahara. Anyway, not important. So there you go. Deserts are either really, really hot or really, really cold. Here's a map of where deserts are. So there you go. There's lots of deserts in the centre of Australia, as you can see right there. You notice there's a big band of deserts going through what's basically a really, really hot part of the middle of the earth. You've got some cold deserts down here, along here, and then obviously a massively cold desert in Antarctica. Remember, the most important thing about deserts is that it's low rainfall, so it's dry. Next landscape, rainforests. They are the most diverse of all landscapes. You find 50% and more of all life, plants and animals, found in rainforests. So they're very important for biodiversity, i.e. the diversity of life on Earth. And obviously they have high rainfall. That's the thing that makes them rainforests. And they, again, can be hot or cool. Not as cold as some deserts, but you can have hot rainforests and you can have cool or temperate rainforests as well. We're going to, let's have a look at a map of where the rainforests are. Boom! Check it out. Now think about the spatial distribution of rainforests. This is just tropical rainforests. We could have looked at a different map showing temperate rainforests. Temperate rainforests would be both further south and further north. Yeah, this is kind of like the temperate zone, this bit in the middle. Let me see if I can draw that for you. The temperate zones, like the tropics. Wow, that's extremely straight. I'm so impressed with myself. So this here is called the tropics. So rainforests in here are tropical. And then below that area you've got, what a sweet straight line, you've got, these are called the temperate zones. Probably should have just put up a map showing this. I just love to show off my amazing mouse skills. Temperate, oops, get rid of that. Temperate means they're a little bit colder. Temperate zones, yeah, and same down here. And then here is your polar zone, or your frigid zone, or your frozen zone, yeah? So there's 3 zones: tropics, temperate, polar. Moving along. Next type of landscape, grasslands. So grasslands can often be seen as the transition between forests and deserts, yeah? There's usually grassland between forest and desert. You don't go straight from forest to desert. It goes forest, 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 grassland, grassland, forest, grassland, 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 desert. You've got grasses of all different heights. So it could be the grass that you're used to seeing in your backyard that's only that big, or it could be massive grasses as tall as a person. There are a few trees in grasslands, and there's a lot of grazing animals on grasslands. So, you know, deer, antelope, buffalo, whatever. Although we humans have been doing a good job at killing them all. Let's have a look at a map of where some of the most well-known grasslands are. Boom! So you've got a massive amount of African grassland, you've got big grassland in South America there, you've got one going through the middle of the US, and a whole heap of grassland in Asia. Nice. Next landscape, tundra. You might also hear it called polar landscape. I prefer tundra. Tundra, we probably don't know that much about tundra because there is no tundra in Australia, but it's the stuff that's permanently frozen, and the word for that is permafrost. And it's too cold for trees, so you might get little scrubby little bushes or whatever, but no big trees. Where is this tundra, I hear you ask? It is right there, so in blue. So what could you say about the spatial distribution of tundra? You could say tundra is located in the extreme north and extreme south of Earth, centered around the North Pole and the South Pole. Great map interpretation. Finally, not finally, no, I've got a couple left. Karst. I never heard of this one either, but it's super cool. Karst is basically just a weird fancy geography word for underground caves. So you get underground caves made by acidic water. So I think acid can melt through stuff, right? So you've got water that's got kind of a little bit of acid in it, and then you've got rock that's a bit soft, like say limestone, and over years and years and years, and maybe even centuries, that water that's trickling through that rock will melt holes in it, and then you have these underground caves. And in those underground caves you can find fresh water, and that's where 1/4 of the world's fresh water is sourced from these aquifers. So there's a really important word to know, aquifer. It's an underground water source. Karst caves can be found everywhere, so check out this map. Everywhere in pink is a karst region, yeah. So there's heaps of underground caves formed by acidic water all over the world. We don't have a whole heap in Australia. Australia is probably a bit of an outlier in the world in the sense that it doesn't have that much wacky landforms going on. Anyway, and no, this is not quite the last one. We're getting there. Next one, aquatic landscapes. So 3/4 of Earth is aquatic landscapes, and it's made up of 2 types. You've got freshwater, that's lakes, rivers, and wetlands, and then you've got marine aquatic landscapes, or saltwater if you want to call it that, and that's like oceans, seas. The oceans are bigger than seas, that's a simple way to think of it. Yeah, I think there's only like 5 oceans. Let me see if I can remember them. Pacific, Indian, Atlantic, Southern, Northern. I forgot one. Not important. So there you go. And Coral reefs are also a marine landscape. Here's a picture of all of the major rivers in the world. Now, only one gets a mention in Australia, and that's the Murray-Darling River. It's called the Murray-Darling because the Murray and the Darling meet up, boom, and then they go out to the sea around about Adelaide. So there's all the great river systems of the world. Here you got a big one there that you might know about, the Nile. Another one there, you got the Amazon. Here you got the Mississippi, you got the Colorado. Anyway. This here are some of the most famous lakes in the world. We don't have any really big lakes in Australia. There you go. Got some serious lakes happening in the US. Finally, the last type of landscape, and that be human landscape. Now, landscapes can be created by humans or altered by humans, okay? So like a farmland's not created by a human, but it's altered and managed by humans. Or then you could have a city, which is totally created by humans and also managed. I was trying to find a map to show an example of human landscapes, and I found this one. This is a satellite map at night. What it's actually showing is light. So it's showing all of the places where there's a lot of electricity turned on at night. Now we can use that to estimate where all of the cities are, right? If there's a city, there's going to be street lights, and so it's going to show up as a bright light on our satellite map, and that roughly correlates, i.e. matches up with where the major cities are on Earth. So it kind of links up with where human population is, right? So heaps of electricity use in the eastern US. There's also lots of cities there. All over Europe, obviously, there's a massive amount of electricity being used there. Other big population centers include India, obviously, and China, and Japan, and around the coasts of Australia a little bit. The only downside to this one is that richer countries can afford more electricity than poorer countries, so this map is a little bit biased towards countries that are rich enough to be able to have lots of street lights. Yeah, so you notice that the richest, the brightest parts are North America, Europe, Japan, because they're the richest parts of the world. Here's another way to look at it. This is from 2006, but it's every single city that's got 1 million people or more in it. Isn't that interesting? So that's a really good way to think about where the people are located. Yeah. So look at all the cities in China that have over 1 million people, and India. Now you start to understand these are countries with over 1 billion people in each. They are massive. Now I love the future, and I especially love this, because this shows what's going to happen in the next 80 years or so. So in 2010, that's where the world's biggest cities were. Yeah, biggest city in the world currently is Tokyo, with roughly 36 million people. It's massive if you've ever been there. How many of them have I been to? Tokyo, Mexico City, New York. No, that's it. Anyway, so they're the top ones in 2010. Now let's fast forward to 2100. Yeah, so this is in 80 years in the future, and look where all the cities are going to be: Africa and West Asia. So big change, moving away from the Americas to Africa. So the biggest population growth we're seeing and urbanization is in Africa. Lagos is going to have almost 100 million people in it. Madness! Right, your simple activity is you're going to trace or draw a blank map of Australia, put bolts on it. That's you're going to have a border, orientation, legend, title, scale, source. And now I want you to put at least one of each of these landforms on it. I want you to put one mountain. I want you to name that mountain, or it could be a mountain range. Great Dividing Range. One desert, put the name of a desert and shade it in. One rainforest, one grassland, one tundra. Just joking, we don't have any tundra, you don't have to worry about that one. One karst landform, so you need to find an aquifer for that. One freshwater landform, and one marine one. And is it? Yep, I think so. Right, so for example, here's my, let me see if I can do this task really quickly. Okay, I've got to do border. Let's do a border around it. Boom, you've got to do this straight here. I'm just doing the 10-second example version. Border, orientation, north. L, legend. Oh, I'm going to do my legend in a minute. Maybe I say legend. Just pretend that says legend. Title, I would say, I haven't left enough space here, but it would be like Landforms of Australia. Scale, I would go, how far is it from Melbourne to Sydney? It's about 800k. Okay, so that there, 800k. And your source, where did you get the information from? So did you use Wikipedia? Where did you find out where all of your landforms are from? Don't say Google. Google is not where you find things. Google points you to things, right? So maybe, okay, I'm going to find my mountains. So maybe I find the Great Dividing Range, which is like there, and then I put that in my legend. I write mountains, and then I name it Great Dividing Range. And then maybe I find a desert, and I put my desert in here, and I give that in my legend, and I call that, the Simpson Desert or whatever. Yep. So you do that with all of those landforms that you saw on the last slide. Now it's time to watch a video. I got my 6-year-old daughter to watch this video yesterday. It's super engaging. It's only 4 minutes long. It's really cool. So check it out.
Look outside your window for a sec, and you'll probably see some buildings and streets, maybe telephone poles, hopefully some trees in there too. A lot of the world that we live in has been shaped by people, and hey, no complaints because I'm plenty comfortable right here. But people aren't the only ones moving things around and shaping our world. Wind, rain, and other elements do it all the time, making shapes out of the earth we call landforms. So what are some kinds of landforms, and how are they made? First, remember that the Earth is made of several spheres, including the hydrosphere, biosphere, atmosphere, and geosphere. The solid part of the Earth, or geosphere, may look pretty stable, but it's always changing. Weathering and erosion by wind and water are constantly reshaping what our planet's surface looks like, and even if it takes so long that we don't usually notice it, it's happening. Let's check out our map to explore what kinds of landforms there are around the world. Mountains are probably some of the most well-known landforms. Basically, they're just really big hills, with steep sides that stretch way above the surface of the Earth. Many mountains are formed when large plates, or pieces of the Earth's surface, collide and are forced upwards. The low spaces in between, we call those valleys. But if mountains don't pique your interest, how about plateaus? Plateaus are also tall landforms, but unlike mountains, which tend to have the pointy tops we know as peaks, plateaus have flat tops. Plateaus come in lots of sizes. If they're medium-sized, for example, they're called mesas, which is the Spanish word for table, which is highly appropriate since plateaus kind of look flat and long, like tables. And if they're smallish, they're called buttes. No matter what they're called or what size they are, plateaus can form in lots of different ways. Sometimes they're caused by the erosion or wearing away of mountains, like by water or really big pieces of ice. Other plateaus are made by magma, which is really hot, melted liquid earth below the surface. When magma swells up below the surface but can't break through, it can push up a flat chunk of land, leaving that table-like formation behind. And speaking of magma, let's go to the Pacific Ocean on our map for a good look at the most explosive landforms. Volcanoes. These landforms are found where the surface of the Earth is relatively thin. When magma breaks through the surface or erupts, that hot liquid rock gets a new name, lava, and a new volcano is born. Hot stuff coming through. Hot is definitely a good term to describe another kind of landform. Deserts. Deserts are landforms that lose more water to air than they get through rain, snow, or other kinds of moisture. The world's largest desert is the Sahara in northern Africa, where daytime temperatures can climb to a sweltering 55 degrees Celsius. Just a wee bit out of my personal comfort zone. But then again, so are the cold temperatures in Antarctica, which is actually considered to be a desert too. Penguins in the desert. Who knew it, right? Time to set sail for two more kinds of landforms, islands and deltas. You'll find deltas at the mouth or end of rivers where they meet the ocean. Deltas are formed when dirt and other debris that are washed down the river accumulate or build up to form a piece of land. Islands, on the other hand, can form any number of ways. They might come from the cooled lava of underwater volcanoes or from a whole lot of dirt, sand, and pieces of coral building up due to ocean currents. Islands can even form by breaking off from a larger piece of land, so they can form in lots of ways, but as long as it's surrounded on all sides by water, it's an island. In our travels today, we took a look at lots of different kinds of landforms, which are natural features of the Earth's surface. Landforms can stretch high above the Earth's surface, like mountains, plateaus, or mesas, be created in or by water, like deltas and islands, or even be dry, like deserts. So remember these things the next time you step outside. Underneath and beyond and all around the things that people have made, there are landforms, millions of years in the making.
Real simple reflection activity. Write this down. It's a 3, 2, 1. Give me 3 things you learnt during this lesson, 2 things you found interesting and would like to know more about, and 1 question that you still have. So for this task, you're going to write down the lesson title, the learning goals, all of the notes in white about the 8 forms of 8 landscapes. You're going to do that activity where you're doing a hand-drawn map of Australia and including all those landforms in it, including bolts. And then you do the reflection activity right here in green, and you upload that to the task, and then you are done. Thank you so much, and do not ever forget to keep it real.